Hello there, welcome to Travels with Geordie. My name is Peter and this fine looking fellow here is Geordie, and we live aboard this classic wooden motor cruiser here in Victoria, British Columbia, all the while restoring it for some pretty major international cruising when we finally get around to it. Anyway, if that's the sort of thing you might be interested, why don't you stick around and subscribe. This is a special episode for us. This is episode 100, which won't mean much other than a slightly different intro. But let's look forward to another 100 episodes. Cheers. Hey, Pop, what do you say? What do you say? What do you say? What do you say? Okay, and here we go. How many times have I said we're going to get this door built? Well, this time we actually are. Got to get rid of this big chunk of plywood in here, which is basically what part of the panel of the door will be made out of. And the frame will be made out of this lovely 1-inch thick sapelli mahogany stock that I've been hoarding for the last little while, that I had dressed up a little while ago. And this is a absolutely lovely piece of wood. Look at the straight grain on that. Just beautiful. Okay, so I have actually drawn up a bit of a real drawing for this. I don't know how well you'll be able to see this on camera, but here's the basic door. It's just over 2 feet wide by almost 6 feet tall, and it's going to be made in the panel style of maybe arts and crafts style or Frank Lloyd Wright style. Basically, there'll be a full panel at the top and a double panel at the bottom with an extra style put into it, and a little extra sort of a shelf rail put in here at the cross rail. Anyway, you'll see as it all comes together. Too much information, more sawdust. Let's go. One foot, 7 1/4. Okay, so we're ready for a pretty big rip. The 6 foot long piece of wood. I can't really rip it in here unless I use my in one window, across the saw and out the other window technique. So that's what we're going to do now. I'm going to use a good solid bottom rail. I like a door with a solid bottom rail. Okay, now we get to routing. Okay. And now I'll do the long ones, got to set it up for that. You'll notice I'm only taking a small bite. This will actually be maybe 1 inch deep when I'm done. Okay, so all the pieces have been cut with one cut. Now I got to lower the blade, and it's cutting really well, but I don't want to get sloppy, so I'm going to do it in about 1/4 inch bites. It means there's lots of passes, but slow and steady. Okay, so now to cut the tenons, and I'm going to do these in the opposite direction, basically using a big square block to be able to slide it through the cutter. And theoretically, I've just made a couple passes, I'm not quite there yet. You can see there's just a feather left between the tenon and the groove, and theoretically that tenon should fit into that groove, so it's got to be slightly smaller. So let's take off just a hair more. By using this big square block and making sure I hold them mated together well, I remove some of the irregularities of bumping across between the two fences and up over the table, which is on this fence, on this router table, not all that good. Alright, so that now fits into there quite nicely. Whew, that's hot. Okay, time to see how this will all go together. The middle one's in the middle somewhere, about there. And the bottom one, oh, nice and snug. And we put the other style on. I like it. I like it. Okay. Well, we have a door. Sort of. So, I'm going to call that pretty close to amazing. They're good and flat too, which is good. Now, I just need to cut the panels out of the plywood. All right, let's do some ripping. Okay, let's see how these close up. Ah! 24-inch clamps. 24-inch and a half. Okay, I have options. I am so grateful this cabin is 9 feet long and change, because how many people can swing a sheet of plywood around in their wheelhouse? Okay, let's connect the dots here. Okay. Oof. Now, to chunk this into its corresponding pieces. There we go, don't need this. Okay, first things first, some water and some paper towel. Gosh forbid glue oozes out all over the place. I want to be able to get it off quickly. Now I just need paper towel, here we go. So, we're ready to go if there's trouble with glue. Okay, so Tight Bond 3. Theoretically waterproof. Not that it matters much inside, but I found this to be an amazing glue. In the old days, for this kind of work, I would have used Gorilla Glue urethane, but because it's strong as anything. But when you have these joints, dado joints, and the rail and style, if any of that foams out in the corner, it is just such a pain to keep it clean. Okay, so let's go. There will be a fair amount of squeeze out, and that's why I have the paper towel. So let's load up the bottom here. So you gotta go sort of on the side. There we go. And back. Great. Glue all over the place. So, starting at this end, I'll first load up this dado. And then this tenon, it'll squeeze all the way up and out and on. All right, let's get the worst of that right away. So the next piece is the first piece of ply. Now I'm not going to glue the plywood because there's plenty of glue down in these joints as it is already. There we go. Okay, next one. So this gets all kinds. So it gets 2 dados and its mortise and its tenon. Nice. Okay, next piece of plywood. Okay, that goes in. Slide along, get some glue. Yes. Isn't it amazing that this is actually standing upright on its edge on a bunch of blue bins on a boat? Okay. Nice. Okay. Now, putting the remaining style on really gonna suck, because I gotta load it up inside, flip it over, and it's gonna dribble like crazy. So I gotta be a little more careful about how I load this up. Okay, this is the part that's either gonna go great or not so great. So we're gonna start down here. Try to get it as close as possible. There we go. Alright, let's get some of this glue out. And not too much has glued out and squirted out into the panel, which is where it's going to be much more difficult to remove. So, now it's clamping. Now, I think I already showed you that I don't have clamps big enough. So, I'm going to use ratchet straps. Now, ratchet straps are great for a lot of things. For clamping cabinetry, they're not ideal, but when you don't have any other option, it's what you're going to do. Side. There we go. Not putting too much tension on it just yet, just want to get them in place. Okay, not too much tension. The reason I want to put too much tension is because I've made a couple of little crush blocks so that any damage that is caused to the edges here doesn't get relayed into my actual This one is vulnerable not to be square because it's not tied in all that well. Good enough for me. Now, the risk with ratchet straps is because it's only pulling on the top and not on the bottom, is that it'll curl the planks up. So you have to be very vigilant about that and pay attention. Nice, not walking. Okay, you don't need to watch any more of this. I'm going to fuss with this a little bit more. I think I mentioned there's one little trick you can do with these if you need another inch or so, and that's you can skip the actual pads and then just use the actual frame as a clamp, but you got to be careful you're not going to do any damage. And I'm glad to be doing that because it squirted out a little glue here and here, meaning that needed to tighten up. Hey, and we're back at it. Time to take the clamps off and see how this door turned out. It's so warm here today. It's hard to believe just a few days ago there was 8 inches of snow on the ground. Well, we're back to beautiful Victoria weather. Some of you may recognize my beautiful Duluth longtail tee. I'm absolutely loving this thing. It's fast becoming my favorite garment. Okay, let's get the clamps off of this and see what we can do next. Okay, so the first thing I want to know is it flat? And oh, I would say that looks pretty good. Bunch of things to think about here. I still have to add the little trim piece that goes in here that, you know, starts to turn it more into a arts and crafts style door, as well as a little trim piece that's going to go in here. This is something I'm sort of making up, but it's basically the theme. That pattern is the theme of most of the doors and bulkheads in the boat. Now, you can clearly see that the texture of the plywood and the texture of the sapele mahogany is completely different, as is the hue. All night I've been kind of stressing about whether or not that and that are going to look at all similar when it's done. Now, let me take you on a little tour. Okay, so here's the aft cabin cockpit door. You have a few nicks in it I wish weren't there. This is sapele, and it's never had anything on it but tung oil. This is the same marine plywood, and it's never had anything on it but tung oil. And I'm content with the way these two match. I think it's not too bad. So I'm tempted to not do anything different and just let the sapele and the Marente or whatever it is kind of merge together in time. But then I get nervous and I think maybe I shouldn't do that. That's turned out really nice. Ending's done, and I must say I am mighty pleased. It's starting to look like a real door. Now to make the trim pieces, which means I got to get this off of here. Put the patented Travels with Geordie workbench back together and find some wood. Okay, so I found a suitable piece of wood, and for that I'm going to use to make these little strips, which are 1.5 inches wide and less than 1/4 thick, so they're almost veneers. So I'll cut a piece 1.5 inches wide, and then I'll rip it into something thin. And then for my little, I don't know what I want to call this, trim piece, plate rail type of thing, it'll be roughly 3/4 inch longer in each direction. And I'm going to start with 1 inch deep, but I may tinker with it and see what I think of how that looks. Anyway, pretty straightforward, just ripping some wood. 1 inch. Okay, first thing is to rip this way into some tiny little thin veneers to go under there. So let's try that. Lots of blade burn, but I expected that. That's a pretty tough rip, really. But anyway, that's what sandpaper's for. really thin one. So I'm trying to just get an idea of roughly how I think this will look and whether or not I need to trim it differently. So that's an inch out. It's going to go in 3/4 because I'm going to cut a little notch so it'll sit in there. So it won't be so proud, and I'm going to soften the edges a fair amount. But I like it. I think I like it. Yeah, yep. I can always take more off if I need to. Anyway, so let me cut these 2 notches out. All right. Beauty. Beauty, 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 beauty. So now we'll just ease some edges. How eased? Routed eased or just sanded eased? Just sanded, I think. Oh, I'm liking it. I am liking it. Okay. Just a little more tidying up, but with the hand block. That's looking pretty nice. So probably just a little bit of fine tuning yet, but let's see how it looks. Arrow up. Oh, I gotta bring you over to have a look at that. Isn't that nice? Wait till we get some finish on that. That's just gonna be fantastic. Oh, you gotta get the other piece in. Yeah. Instant gratification. That's what I live for. Instant gratification. Alright then, so it's time to attach these little battens, whatever we're going to call them. I've marked on a piece of tape where they go, which is exactly in the middle. I've checked them for length. They're perfect. I've chamfered them a little. They're ready to go on. So I'm going to put them on with glue and some tiny little brads. Now, if you haven't seen me use these nails before, these are 23 gauge headless nails. I'm hoping you can focus on them. They are so small they have to put an arrow on the nails so you know which way they go. Because they're headless, you can hardly tell which end is pointy. The guns that shoot these nails are not cheap, but they're super nice. I'm sure you've seen me fire a few of these before, and they are just so beautiful. The head just disappears into the wood. This gun has another neat little feature that has a little blowgun on it. Love it. Okay, so I've just put in the little short 1/2-inch jobbies because I do not want to send nails through to the other side. It's true I'm putting another batten on the other side, but there's no sense making that difficult. All right, so I'm going to put just enough glue on this to hold it. I do not want to be cleaning any glue out the side. This is a decorative piece, not meant to be structural. There. Beauty. And I'm just going to put enough pins in that I'm sure the glue will set properly. See, you can't even see them. So that's done. Let's put the one on the other side. Oh, now before I flip it, you know I also have this, I'm calling it a chair rail piece. I have no idea why I'm calling it that. Anyway, that goes here, except I'm only putting one on the other side, the side that will face the wheelhouse, because the aft cabin side of this door is going to get a big cabinet on it that when it swings against the bed will be a bit of a like a night table type of thing. Some of you may have seen me playing with that already, and that will basically come from about here down to about here, and basically the top shelf of it will replace this shelf but with a deep shelf, and then it'll come down into a cabinet. Why I'm putting this on, I don't know, because anyway, I think it'll be fine. It'll be fine. Okay, same thing on the other side, starting with sweeping up a little bit. Half in each direction. Slightly spread around. Beautiful. Okay, now this thing. I think what I'm going to do is actually pin it from behind through the plywood. And I just realized I'm wearing my shirt inside out. You guys probably noticed this all along. How about? Effectively the same. I don't use the pocket anyway. Okay, so let's put a little glue in there. Good. What I think I'll probably do, although I'm pinning it from the back, I think I'll probably put some screws in from the back eventually. Because this is the kind of thing, I don't know, no one's going to grab it and hang on to it or anything, I'm sure. But okay, I got to hold this while I tip up the door. Reach over here, grab the gun. Feels a little precarious. Fantastic. I love it. I absolutely did not scratch out of it. So that is done. Love, 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 love it. Now, it's just the debate about whether or not I stain this plywood or not. Okay, we're going to do some test pieces. That's what we're going to do. And welcome to this week's Beer of the Week. This week, another local microbrewery, Trois Dogs, from here in Victoria. And the beer is Mistress of My Soul Saison. Now, this is a really special beer. I'm generally not a Saison fan. It's very, it's fruity like an IPA. It certainly has citrus notes in it, but it's not hoppy. They say it's late hop with New Zealand hops. Well, whatever that does, it keeps it from being too hoppy, but it's still very flavorful. And what it is really nicely carbonated. And what that means is not strongly carbonated. It's a very, very fine carbonation. But what it means is you must have an absolutely clean glass to pour this beer, and cold doesn't hurt either. You'll see in a second that this is seriously carbonated. Got to pour this super slow. Anyway, I love this beer. I ran across it sort of by accident, sort of a summer drinking beer. And in summertime, I drink this stuff just regularly. It's fantastic. But you can see it is easy to put a head on that. In fact, it's difficult not to. You can see it's continuing to bubble away. I try to get this glass perfectly clean, but those of you who know beer know that this glass is, well, it's effectively filthy. It takes all those little particles to create all that carbonation in there. Anyway, let's have a sip. This is going to be a bit of a mess. Love that beer. Absolutely love it. It's definitely a microbrew. Has a very distinctive flavor. Not too hoppy, not too fruity. I don't really know if I would call it a Saison, but they do, so it's a Saison. So cheers to Trois Dogs and their Mistress of My Soul Saison. So while we're at it, cheers to this week's new patrons from Patreon. There are Patrick Erm, hope I pronounced that correctly, Patrick, and Lucy Moore, which I'm pretty sure I pronounced correctly. Thank you both for joining in, and I'm very grateful for your support. Cheers, and see you next week.